Hey everyone, it's Malia. I am stuck at home with a cold. I figured I would finally make that Atomic Habits video that I've been meaning to make for a while and procrastinating on. This is video 2 of 2 on Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is probably going to be a bit of a longer video because it was a really dense book with a lot of really good information, so I want to share as much as I can with you and also offer my ADHD perspective for those of you who struggle with habits like me. The book has really nice summaries at the end of every chapter. If you're more of a reader, you could just go through those, but then you wouldn't get my shining personality. Before we get started, mental health disclaimer. In the past, when my life was in a much harder place, I think I would have found this a very difficult book to read. If you find yourself feeling bad at any point, this is not the video for you. I hope it came across in my last video that you are capable of habits, and also that it's okay to choose the smallest habit possible. If you find yourself really struggling with a new habit and you feel yourself feeling bad about yourself, it's not you, it's the habit. You need to find a smaller habit that's more realistic for yourself. Or I give you full permission to stop watching. Your mental health and your self-esteem comes before any of the extra organizational stuff. I recommend picking one habit and kind of following through this video. I feel like it's easiest to understand all this stuff with an example. I'm going to use several, but just for context, I do aerial silks. Not very well, but it's fun, and I feel like it's an easy example for me to use throughout this video. But if the habit you're going for is just brushing your teeth or taking a pill, that's awesome, good for you. Be kind and realistic with yourself. Without further ado, this is How to Build a Successful Habit in 4 Steps according to James Clear. According to James Clear, there are 4 steps you need for a successful habit: cue, craving, response, and reward. And we're gonna kind of structure the video along those 4. An example he used that I like to demonstrate these 4 is around drinking coffee. The cue is you wake up. The craving is you feel groggy and you want to feel more alert. The response is you drink coffee, and the reward is you feel alert because you drank the coffee. As a result of that, you start using coffee to wake up because it helped you solve your problem. According to James Clear, that's what habits are. A habit is a way to solve a problem. So the first step of our successful habit is the cue. The cue is what triggers a behavior. The cue is how we notice the reward. I think the cue is the most important step for ADHD because we tend to forget so often. We have the problem of out of sight, out of mind, where if I can't see it, then I forget it exists. A cue is something you see that triggers your habit. For example, I see my pill bottle in the morning, so I take my pills. Another thing I really like about this book is there's actually a ton of worksheets that come with it online. In the book, he walks you through making something called a habit scorecard. His website is atomichabits.com if you want a template for this. But if not, I invite you to pause the video and just make a list of all of your habits that you do every day. Everything from waking up to watering the plants to taking pills to scrolling on your phone. The goal is to notice these habits and not to judge these habits. Observe yourself like an animal on safari. And I said daily habits, but really they can be weekly, they can be monthly, anything that you do automatically. Once you're done, go through the list and label each item as good, bad, or neutral. Good, bad, or neutral depending on if they're helping you become the person you wish to be. Once you have your list, think about your habits a little bit. What triggers them? The most common cues are time and location. Maybe you come home at 6 p.m. every day from work and you automatically feel hungry when you walk in the door, so you go and make yourself a sandwich. When it comes to forming good habits, environment is more important than motivation. This is so important for ADHD because intrinsic motivation is what we're taught that we need to have, but it's so much harder for us. Your brain is context dependent. This is why when you walk out of a room and you forget something, you go back into that room to remember it. I remember learning in school that when they did studies on students studying for a test, if the students studied for the test while drunk, they actually did better on the test if they took the test while drunk. This is not an endorsement. Please don't study drunk. The point is, your internal and external environment are so important when it comes to your habits. So you want to design your environmental cues for success. Make your cues stand out. He says every habit should have a home. Divide your space into zones. If you're trying to improve your work ethic, only study at your desk. Don't eat at your desk. Don't study on your couch. Make your desk the study zone so that your brain goes into that context. The best habit cues are obvious. You want to add as many triggers as you can to help you remember a habit. Make it as easy as possible for yourself. If your goal is to eat more fruit, put fruit in an obvious bowl on the counter. For me, I always had a really hard time taking pills in the morning, so now I leave my pills in my direct sight line when I walk down the stairs. They look kind of ugly on the counter, but I almost never forget to take them now because they're the first thing I see in the morning. Think again about the habit you want to add. You're going to do something called habit stacking. This is where our list of current habits comes in. Habit stacking is tying a new habit to something you're already good about doing. So one of the habits on your scorecard. After current habit, I will new habit. For example, like I said, I always take my pills in the morning, but I'm really bad at exercising. So for me, it was after I take my pills, I will do one strength training exercise. This is actually great, and I actually learned about this for the first time at an ADHD conference, which is also where I heard about this book. You can also use things that happen to you as cues. For example, the sun sets, so you start your wind down routine for sleep. You might be wondering about bad habits as well. If you have a bad habit, you probably have a lot of cues in your environment that remind you of that habit. If you're trying to break that habit, make it invisible. Habits are easier to change in a new environment. If you keep buying junk food and you want to eat healthier, you may want to try a different grocery store. Eliminate as many triggering cues as you possibly can. You need to change your environment, change your context. For example, get rid of all the sugar in your house. Reduce stress if it causes you to eat more sugar. Unfollow foodie social media accounts. Buy your groceries online. I said this was probably the most important part for ADHDers, but I also think it's probably the easiest step in the process because ADHDers, maybe I shouldn't speak for all of us, I am very easy to distract. If you have a giant red sign telling yourself to exercise, that's probably not the reason you're not exercising. For my cue, I put a sticky note next to my pill bottles that reminds me to do my exercises. I had a big clear sticky and a big exercise whiteboard. And it worked for me for a little while, but then it stopped. And that's where the next step comes in. Step 2 is the craving. This is your motivation or desire. This is you wanting the reward. It's craving the reward that will elicit the response, not the reward itself. So you need to make it attractive. I really hate exercise, and I really didn't think I could make myself crave it, but here are some ideas. Temptation bundling. Temptation bundling is linking an action you want to do with an action you need to do. So you can combine this with habit stacking, and it looks something like this. After current habit, I will habit I need. After habit I need, I will habit I want. I swear that looks a lot better written than it sounds out loud, but here's my example. After I take my pills, I will do my exercises. After I do my exercises, I will enjoy some YouTube. For this exercise, I found it helpful to make a list of stuff that I like doing: reading, crafting, watching YouTube. If this is something you can make work for you, great. Personally, I will admit I had a hard time with this technique. I have very little impulse control, so I will just skip to watching YouTube without doing the habit first. If it works for you though, amazing. I'm happy for you. For me, I needed to focus more on making the exercise itself attractive. Attractive is a concept that comes down to how you were socialized as a child. If your parents rewarded you for playing sports as a kid, you probably liked playing sports. You will naturally be attracted to behaviors the people in your environment do or find socially acceptable. We tend to imitate people who are close, many, or powerful. According to James Clear, we can use this to our advantage. Proximity. He says to surround yourself with people for whom your desired behavior is the normal behavior and you already have something in common with the group. The example he uses is going to a fitness center made specifically for video game nerds. There's also the tribe or the majority. He says the reward of being accepted is often greater than the reward of winning an argument, looking smart, or finding truth. I know some of my autistic neuro cousins would disagree with me on this one, but in general, change is very attractive when it means fitting in. Finally, powerful or successful people. It seems obvious, but we imitate people we want to be more like, and then we try to avoid behaviors of people that we don't like. Another way you can work on craving is just mentally turning have-tos into get-tos by associating hard things with positive experiences. Instead of I have to exercise in the morning, I'm working on I get to build strength now so I can get to the next level in my aerial class. P.S. As of this video, it actually worked. I started reading this book back in January, and the advice in it actually helped me move up a level in my aerial class. So yay, habit science. Finally, making something attractive can be as simple as conditioning. In school, I learned about studies where they showed that wearing the same pair of glasses could actually increase focus while studying if you learn to associate it with a task. James Clear says you can apply that same concept to any task, to any positive thing. For example, if you play the same song every time you exercise, eventually, when you listen to the song, you will crave exercise. Pavlov's dogs and all that. Conversely, to break a habit, you need to make your craving unattractive. Clear says that your cravings indicate a deeper motive. I was really hooked on boxed mac and cheese for a long time, and I guilted and shamed myself a lot for that, but really, I just went really long periods without eating and I needed food. Having boxed mac and cheese on hand reduced uncertainty and it met my food needs. If you have a problem with scrolling through social media, you're just trying to connect and bond with others. Are they good ways of doing that? Not necessarily. They're okay in moderation. But if you're trying to break a habit, it's helpful to know that your habits are a way to meet those needs, but they're not the only way to meet those needs. And a quick little bit of validation here. When you have impulse control issues, and when businesses use habit science against you to get you to buy their products, to make their products irresistible to the human brain, of course you're having a hard time breaking that bad habit. So much is working against you, but now you're armed with a little bit more knowledge, and you can use the same science too. Cravings are a sense that something is missing. It's a desire to change your internal state. I didn't actually want the mac and cheese. I wanted to feel differently. We want habits to make us feel better. So I stopped keeping mac and cheese in the house, and I started experimenting with equally easy ways to meet my food need. Pre-made salads and sandwiches from the supermarket, 10 out of 10 recommend. Step number 3 is the response. The response is the habit you perform, and you want to make performing it as easy as possible. If it requires more physical or mental effort than you're willing to put in, then you're not gonna do it. Now, at this point in the book, I got briefly triggered when he said that people are naturally lazy. I hate that word. I don't think lazy exists. I think most people are trying really hard and have barriers to success in the things that they want to do. But he quickly won me back when he said that he thinks laziness is a good thing. We all only have limited energy, so our brains naturally want to conserve it. Oh my God, spoon theory. In a neurotypical book, our brains want to work smarter, not harder. So particularly with ADHD or really any chronic condition, the easier we can make habits for ourselves, the better. The easier it is, the more likely you're going to do it when your spoons are low. We're going to keep this as low spoons as possible. So the way we're going to do this, first we're going to identify your barriers and remove them. For example, putting your pills in your sight line of where you wake up, where you eat breakfast. I have my water jug and my cup right next to where I take my pills, so I don't have to go out of my way to take them. If you want to do your strength training exercises right after taking your pills, makes it pretty easy to have your resistance bands right next to where your pills are. Ask yourself why a habit isn't working for you, and then remove those barriers as best you can. He calls this addition by subtraction. I think with ADHD, we really have to go extra with this, above and beyond. The easier, the better. Another way is to prime the environment. Personally, I have a hard time with this one because it in itself is a habit. Priming the environment is setting the environment up for your habit. Like packing a healthy lunch the day before you want to take the healthy lunch to work. Putting your workout clothes in the place that you work out every day. For me, this is a little bit too much brain power, but the one way I was able to make it work. On my days off, I've started a reading habit for this channel, so I keep my book and my notebook out and visible at the table where I read. Another way to make it easy is to set up a domino effect. This one kills me every time because it works so well, and it goes back to making the habit tiny. If you're trying to get yourself to the gym, for me, it's trying to get myself to the aerial gym to practice. So my habit is to just put on my workout clothes. But the thing with that is every time I put on my workout clothes, I naturally go put on my shoes, and I naturally go fill my water bottle, and I naturally walk out to my car, and then I naturally drive to the aerial gym. Maybe you don't have those natural instincts around your workout clothes yet, but here's the way you can set it up. You start by just building a habit of putting on your workout clothes. Once that habit is automatic, you habit stack. When you put on your workout clothes, then you get in the car. You don't have to go anywhere, you just have to get in the car. And then once that becomes automatic, you habit stack again. And once you get in the car, you just drive to the gym parking lot. See where I'm going with this? It makes me so mad because it works so well. And when I'm tired, I always tell myself, oh, I'm just gonna put on my workout clothes. But deep down, I know it's not gonna be just my workout clothes. Science, man, it works. Honestly, this whole part of the book called me out really hard. You can plan all you want, but planning doesn't produce. You can choose these big habits, you can obsess over perfectionism, you can plan all you want, but planning doesn't produce. And avoiding failure and criticism just leaves you with nothing. If you slip into just planning things all the time, it's because you want to delay failure. Ugh. Too real, right? You are better off picking an easier, smaller habit and just practicing. In the words of Shia LaBeouf, just do it. Repetition on those tiny things will make processes automatic. Your brain will adapt and grow to these habits as you use them. You've probably heard it takes 21 days to make a habit, but James Clear says time has nothing to do with it. It's about repetitions. My last video, we talked about the 2-minute rule. If you're feeling overwhelmed by your habit, you can stop after 2 minutes. Stop when you're feeling good so it doesn't feel like a chore. Make it super easy for yourself. What is the smallest behavior you can do to hopefully trigger the behavior that you want? After you have that baseline, you can do what's called habit shaping. After showing up for your habit is automatic, you could advance to a slightly harder step, just like in the domino effect. I think I talked in my How to Keep House While Drowning video about how I try to put one dish away every time I fill up my water bottle in the morning. Habit shaping would be turning one dish into one category of dishes, and often it turns into that anyways. So to break a habit, your response should be difficult. Eating boxed mac and cheese was a lot harder when we stopped buying boxed mac and cheese. If you're trying to stop scrolling, get one of those phone boxes with a lock on it. To be clear, he does make the point that this is not enough to stop a real addiction, but we all have little bad habits that we want to break. James Clear recommends making something called a commitment device. A commitment device is a choice that you make now that controls your actions in the future. I think this one is tough for people with impulse control issues, honestly, but I think it helps if you can utilize other people. The example he uses, which I think is pretty cool, is putting yourself on the banned list at casinos. You have a gambling problem, or to ask your waiter to box half of your meal in advance so you won't be tempted to eat too much. Commitment devices are one-time actions to improve your habits that make the habits harder to reverse. Another example could be deleting all of your social media apps, fully removing bad habits from your environment to the extent that you can. Technology is your friend. Automate as much as you can. Know every ADHDer's heard it. Go through your to-do list and say, can a machine do this? Finally, step number 4, the reward. For me in my aerial training, the reward is I get to do cool tricks. I said at the beginning that I think cue is the most important for ADHD, but I think this is the second most important because people with ADHD experience rewards differently. So I think it makes it a lot harder and a lot more crucial for us to make it satisfying. When you choose rewards, you want to choose rewards that reinforce your identity. If you're trying to be healthier, rewarding yourself with a chocolate chip cookie after exercise isn't reinforcing that identity. James Clear says, what is rewarded is repeated. Your reward also needs to be immediate. If you don't get immediate satisfaction, you won't do it. Our brain is evolved for immediate rewards. Why do you think social media has us in a chokehold? Delayed gratification is incredibly difficult with ADHD, so we need to add immediate pleasure to our habit. And specifically, we need to add immediate pleasure to the end of our habits. This way, it reinforces the cycle. One way you can do this is with visual reminders. He uses the example, if you have a task that's made up of a lot of other little tasks, that you can take a marble from one jar and put it into another. You've also probably heard of a habit tracker before, but those have been shown to work. Basically, you need some way of tracking a streak. For me, I had a lot of big projects in college, so I made these big colorful progress meters for myself for each project. Kinda like the charity fundraiser ones that you fill in. Science shows that even just tracking a behavior can be enough to trigger behavioral change. Don't lose your streak is a great motivator. Now, I do want to say, because I know it's going to come up, habit trackers are tough for everyone, but they are particularly tough when you have ADHD because it's a whole other habit. The author acknowledges this, and he encourages these habit trackers to be sparsely used and temporary. They're also not mandatory. You don't have to track your habits. He says you should only manually track your most important habit. Basically, you can do it until the dopamine wears off. And then at least you have data. Or you can do it to earn a prize. That occasionally works for me. You can also habit track in a habit stack. Stack it, bop it, twist it, pull it. After current habit, I will habit track. After I take my pills, I do my exercises, then I put a cute little sticker on my little sticker chart that I made. Sticker chart is located right where I exercise, so that was kind of an easy add-on. It's not a perfect system, but I've been going for over 3 months, which is still the longest I think I've ever kept an exercise habit, so something to be said for that. Another thing that, of course, is made better with automation. For example, having your Apple Watch track your workouts. Since those of us with ADHD get bored so very easily, it's really, really important that we vary our rewards, because keeping up habits long term has a lot to do with boredom tolerance. So we gotta keep it interesting. Finally, to break a habit, you need to make the response unsatisfying. What is punished is avoided. I don't like the idea of punishment. I don't really like that word because I associate it with shame, but I think unsatisfying is a much nicer way to put it. I once read about a pill that they can give people with alcoholism so that every time they drink, it makes them feel sick. I think that's kind of the perfect example of what he means with this idea. Less extreme example he uses, if you have an overspending problem, every time you pass on a purchase, you get to put $10 into a fund for something you really want. Personally, I would have a hard time with that, but it might be one of those situations where having a buddy could help. That's your 4 steps. A few final tips. Sticking to a habit is really hard. His advice to never miss twice is a nice idea, but personally, I think the best advice he gives in the book is do it badly. So many of us are perfectionists. We feel like if we can't do the thing perfectly, then we shouldn't do it at all. When in reality, the best thing you can do sometimes is to do the thing badly. If you feel like you just can't do it today, make a game of doing it terribly or doing the minimum possible. I almost never feel like I can go work out, but I can usually talk myself into just putting on my workout leggings or into going to the gym and doing 1 terrible pull-up. If it turns into more, amazing. If not, you showed up and you'll be able to show up for your habit again tomorrow. Overall recommendation, I think it's a great book. If you are struggling, I do not think you should read it. I had to remind myself often that it was written for neurotypicals by a neurotypical, and my goal was to pull out what is useful and relevant for us. Getting your mental health and your self-esteem into a manageable place takes priority over anything in this book. I think he does a really good job at times of making it clear that you are not the problem. Your environment, your habits are the problem. But he also doesn't talk too much about systemic and external factors that impact people's ability to keep up with habits. But if you're able to take the whole thing with a grain of salt, it has helpful visual aids, easy to read chapter summaries, relevant stories for interest and example, and the writing is organized into sections. He asks some really good questions to make you think about yourself and your goals, and he has a workbook and printables and worksheets available on his website. Overall, I'm very glad I read this book. I hope you got something from this video. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Have a nice day.